right. Welcome back. We're here, Peak Value MSP. We got another founder's journey in front of us today, where you're going to learn the story of taking an MSP with a partner and scaling that to exit. Today, joining us, we have Heath Stover from Umbrella Systems. Heath, welcome.
What's up, Kev?
How you doing,
Thanks for having me, man.
You got it, dude. That was a little formal intro, huh? What'd you think?
I know. That was weird, but it was fun. You did really good. Good job, man.
Sweet. Thank you. I think I need to practice that a little bit more.
That's all right.
But here to talk about your journey. You've got a very unique story, one that I personally had a front row seat to. But plenty of people out there in the MSP community, they need to hear this. So I want to kind of start from the very beginning. You know, what inspired you to start your MSP? And originally, like, what did you envision?
Oh, man. The inspiration was like youth and ignorance. I mean, we were, Trent, who's my business partner, we were 25. We did this, and we were both working corporate jobs at that point in time. Like, we're young and hungry, just killing ourselves, working 60-hour weeks for somebody else. And it was just like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Trent and I knew each other from school. So we went to tech school, and that was just kind of the deal of kind of where we had landed if we did anything. And we had talked about starting 6 or 7 different businesses that all would have been catastrophic failures if we had, regardless. But yeah, we were just young and didn't want to work for anybody else, and we didn't have anything tying us down. And, I came home one day and we were standing around the grill drinking a beer, and Trent said, "Hey, by the way, I quit my job today. We're going to do this." I'm like,
nice.
All right, I guess that's the jump off the cliff moment, so to speak. So yeah, we didn't, I wish I could say we had some like master plan. It was just like being 25 and ignorant and arrogant at the same time. We thought we'd start this thing and clients would show up. We'd run it for a few years and sell it for $5 million and then like right off in the sunset. I don't know.
Nice.
But yeah,
so go from working what you thought was way too many hours, 60 hours a week, because that's just absolutely crazy. And it was going to be a good idea for you to start an MSP. So
yeah.
hindsight.
Not so much, right? That was
maybe not the best.
No. And moreover, like, we've been working corporate jobs, right? So in general, there's already an existing structure of like what you do every day and how you function. Now it's us two, like sitting in an office that we'd rented, creating everything from scratch, right? So that first year, actually maybe the first 2 years, the biggest challenges that we had looking back was we honestly just didn't know what we were doing. Like, we didn't know what was important to actually be working on. We were sending really long emails to each other that seemed really important and, pontificating on X, Y, and Z. I think we went like 9 months with effectively zero revenue until we picked up our first client. Looking back, I'd go back to those kids and be like, just stop. What are you doing? But,
so were you writing the emails to each other while you were sitting next to each other, or were these
100%,
at least
1,000%? Yeah. Or, middle of the night, 2 a.m. We were working 80-hour weeks, but we were doing like 3 hours worth of work. So, but
makes sense.
It would have never worked otherwise. Like, if we'd known better, we probably would have quit. So thank God for being young and dumb.
So speaking of young and dumb, when you guys started, how many clients did you have? Were you doing any consulting on the side? Did you start with any clients, or did you just have to go out and try and find some business with your new venture?
We started with exactly zero. Like, this wasn't like we were doing it on the side in our jobs until we had a little bit of revenue. I literally came home from work one day and Trent was like, "I quit my job. We're going to do this." We hadn't talked to a bank. We didn't have money. We had no idea like how we were going to like pay rent for an office or anything like that. So we had zero clients. And we slowly just like, he and I would both like go have coffee with anybody who would meet with us, like thousands of cups of coffee. Joined a couple like trade associations. You know, the name of the company was originally Umbrella Medical Systems. So we started out exclusively in healthcare, and at the end we were very, very heavy in healthcare still. So we
Nice.
joined a couple healthcare organizations, and we just palled around that and made friends with the office managers. So this was '07. And then in '09, we got handed a gift because the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act was implemented, which required doctors to move to electronic medical record.
Right.
And we did 5 years of just complete gut job network replacements to be able to implement these EHR systems in healthcare facilities. And that was really kind of our springboard of like, oh, okay, like this is how we're going to make this work and be able to have clients.
That's awesome. Now, looking at, where you guys started, obviously I came about through Peer in the tail end of your guys' journey. But what was that transition like? Going from an immature organization, zero process, flying by the seat of your pants, writing emails that are, 10 pages long when you could have said it in 2 seconds. How did you transition from that chaotic structure into something of a more formalized, disciplined structure?
So it was the peer group that ultimately went in of like going and sitting with people who were better at this than we did, going, what the hell are you guys doing? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Like I told somebody on a panel I sat on about a year ago that we were like 10 years in the wilderness of just like wandering around. Not really. It was through nothing but pure brute force that we were growing and retaining clients and not churning anything else. So like I went through like a borderline existential crisis when we found, so we ended up implementing True Methods framework, right?
Okay.
That's where
Perfect.
you and I met. Yep. So, we went down that path and then hired, and then I think we'd been in Peer for like 9 months, and it was still just like, we don't know what we're doing here. And it was tough to like really get traction because we were so far away from kind of where that framework existed at that point in time. And this is probably 2016, 17, maybe. So realistically, like not even that long ago, like less than a decade ago, like this business could have gone either way because it wasn't fun anymore. We could have just quit, or we went down the path we went down, thank God. We ended up bringing in Tony Williams, who is consultant at True Methods, and the classic 38-page report about how much you suck. And we used that report as a checklist, and we went through one by one. But we turned over the entire management team. We downsized. At that point in time, we were probably 3 million top line, maybe, but we had 29 people.
Oh, perfect.
So, 3 million top line, 29 people. So you can reverse engineer where profit margin was, right? We were flirting with zero.
0.0.
Yeah, it wasn't red, but it may as well have been. So,
but back then you also thought that was good, though, right? I remember when my MSP was that size.
So it's great, right? Anything above 5% is free money, right? You don't know the difference. So we go through that. So we bring in Tony. Inside of 3 months, the entire management team's turned over. We go from 29 people to 23 people, and from effectively break even to like probably like 13% net margin.
Nice.
Right? So like, then we're like, oh wow, like there is a different path. There's a different way to do this, let alone like the entire framework of the different departments and teams and how they all function together. Getting all that, but that was a 3-year process, probably soup to nuts. That included like firing clients too, getting rid of the bad ones, having to go and resell and onboard new stuff. But that was one of the most challenging times in 17 years, but it was simultaneously the most fun because it was like, we can actually do this now. We have a path to move forward on, and we know this will actually be successful moving forward. So.
Yeah, it's amazing how many really good stories start out with, I met Gary Peak at a trade show, started with True Methods, drank some Kool-Aid, got completely bought in, met this guy named Tony Williams, who I paid an absolute fortune to come in here and tell me how bad I suck. But the great thing about Tony is not only tells you how bad you suck, he tells you where you suck and what you need to fix.
Yep. Oh, great.
And then you and your partner, Trent, took a look at this plan, said, all right, let's clean this up. We don't want to suck like this. Cleaned it up. Mm-hmm. And would you say it took you about 3 years from meeting Tony to actually having a pretty decent business at that time?
It was probably, give or take. It was probably 3 years from when we joined Peer. 6 months later, Tony came in. It's probably 2.5. So it's probably about 3 years soup to nuts. They got us to 90-95%. There's always those straggler stuff that's tough to really iron out. But it was a 3-year process for us.
Yep. You were in a different group before I met you, and you came along as a tag along with somebody that we really wanted inside of our group. And I remember talking to your big brother Keith, our good friend Keith, and going, man, I really want Keith inside of our group. And Keith saw, yeah, great, I'll come on over. But if you want me, you got to have Umbrella, which is Heath and Trent. And I'm just like, all right, Keith. If you're going to vouch for these guys.
Yeah.
So looking at the org structure, I know Trent really well, know you really well. What was the division of labor or, accountability with the partnership? What did you handle? What did your partner handle?
Fortunately for us, our skill sets were very different. Our skill sets and our passion, honestly, too. Like Trent was always technical. Like he was always the most technical person I'd ever known, and but could really understand like the strategy of what we were trying to do along from a technical perspective, and that never interested me. I love a dark room and a spreadsheet is like my happy place, right? Like the math, the KPIs, finance, all of that. So those two things were always very, very clear. We worked well together. We made, decisions together, but from a separation of duties, it was clear. From there, we still had to manage operations until we had brought in an operator to run the company. We effectively split the teams. So I was responsible for the service desk. Trent was responsible for professional services, things like that, until we could really chop it up and hire somebody in to run everybody. So everybody reported up through who would eventually be Gene, who was our COO. But it was interesting. Just trying to get us on the same page. Sometimes it wasn't easy as far as like who's doing what and why and things like that. And we both always did sales, but both of us did sales very differently from each other, very, very differently from each other. So that was always an interesting, challenge and dynamic.
So who got the better results from sales, you or your partner?
Oh,
and this is being recorded. He's going to see this.
100%. I'm going to say me, absolutely. And he would tell you it's him 1,000%. But the reality is the best results we ever got was when we finally actually hired a sales team.
Nice. So kind of looking at your journey, you guys flew by the seat of your pants, did coffees, trade shows, probably hit COIs, referrals, references, all that good stuff like traditional MSPs. What role did, sales have in the organization prior to your exit? You said you had hired an actual salesperson or sales team. What did that look like?
So it had a huge impact on our exit. Because at the point of exit, we'd been on a 3-year, 30% year-over-year growth rate for several different reasons. Not exclusively was it all new logo, but a significant portion of it was. So it was, I think if you go back, it's interesting. You can watch the timelines of like when we joined Peer and then when we left the group that we were in and we joined the group where you were, Kev, because the previous group, the only thing we focused on was just operations, was trying to get in operations tuned up, and we'd pick up clients here or there, but growth was kind of stagnant, wasn't any there. And then when we joined your group, there was a huge focus on sales and marketing, and it was like, oh crap, now we actually have to go sell something, right? So we we did what a lot of people do. We hired salespeople, failed, stumbled backwards, tried again, failed. What worked for us is we brought in a fractional CRO, for lack of a better term, to manage and run the sales team, because it was something that Trent and I tried to do this so long, couldn't do it. We figured, all right, let's just bring somebody in who already knows how to do this, and we don't have to recreate the wheel. And it worked very, very effectively. So we did that about a year before exit, not knowing that we were going to exit either. And we closed $100K in 9 months of new logo.
Nice. That's huge.
That number was a monster. And it kind of just led to, the value of the organization, not just like the previous 3 years as well, but it showed like, okay, this organization, one, can grow, and two, has scaled to date while managing that same amount of growth. So yeah, we could go back and do anything. It would have been really trying to get a sales engine in faster or in sooner, because like once that it's so hard to get it going. And once it stops, you're back to square one or square zero.
So one of the philosophies a lot of us carry inside of an MSP business is sales will fix everything, right? You got an operation problem. How do you fix it? You fix it with sales. You got a churn problem. How do you fix it? Fix it with sales. I would argue and say probably the pivotal moment in your trajectory and that change wasn't the sales. It was actually just joining my group and hanging out with me every day, right?
Yeah, obviously. Yeah,
obviously.
100%.
Excellent. See,
there's a lot of truth to that. I knew that too, right? That whole group, like we all became really close, and it was just all like, what do you need? Like it was always, what do you need? And are you going to use it if I give it to you? And then the accountability around it too. So I mean, I would absolutely assert that being part of that group was a huge component to our long-term success and eventually being able to exit.
Totally. Well, peer in general, right? You just look at the structure of it. Now, not all peer groups are created equally, even inside of the organization that we were a part of, and True Methods and Gary Pica. I personally think is better than sliced bread. I thank him for all of my success in life to date.
Likewise.
But even inside of the groups and the dynamics are so different from group to group. I think, it sounds like hindsight, you got a lot of operational knowledge and know-how that you really needed in that first group. And they held you accountable to make sure that certain things were being done, that you were hitting certain metrics, you were implementing the actual process correctly, and you were getting the right results. And then shifting into, the group prior to your exit with myself and some of our other really good friends like Heath from DKB, we'd already figured out that operation piece, and we had done that together as a team. And now we were really laser focused in on sales and growth and scaling the business. So I think there's a lot to be had by every group. And fortunately, for you, I think the timing was just perfect. Got the operations dialed in, and then now let's just smash the gas on sales. And I remember, previous to your guys' exit, looking at your numbers every single month, it was all up and to the right. It was just a giant hockey stick. Everything was good. Everything was getting even better, and it was borderline great. And then month over month, quarter after quarter, it was just boom, 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 boom. Until that one day when you finally let everybody know, hey, guys, we're out.
We're out. Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk about that exit and transaction and transition. When did you think it was right for you and your partner? How did that partner dynamic play into it? And kind of just start us from there.
Trent and I were incredibly fortunate. We were always on the same page of what the end game was going to be, right? Take different routes, think about it a little bit differently, but ultimately it was, we're going to exit this at some point in time. And the number that we were targeting, was always very similar. We were on the same page in that regard. So we never ran into a situation where one of us was like, I got to get out of this and we got to sell it because I don't want to do this anymore type of deal. Really fortunate. For us, it was interesting because we'd gone to peer. It was in January, actually. And the few weeks leading up to that, preparing all the numbers, preparing for the meetings, I'd been just digging through numbers and putting projections together. It was the new year. So putting the what would have been the 2023 projections together, and then I spanned it out a couple more years, and basically looking at it going, okay, like we have 12 to 24 months to keep doing what we're doing, and we'll be able to exit based on market data at that time and what I thought the organization was valued at.
Yeah.
So we came to Peer, had that conversation with everybody, said, here, like we're starting a 2-year drill right now. And the MSP space, being small, word got out on that. Had a couple of conversations, and we were under a LOI 60 days later. So it happened really, really fast. And part of it was we didn't really understand the market dynamics and where values really were, and the value that kind of Umbrella had at that point in time due to a variety of different factors.
Yeah. Now, when did you guys exit?
It was summer of 23. So
summer 23.
July 2023.
Cool. And then before you got into LOI with ultimately the organization that acquired you, IT Solutions, what did that look like? Were you working with anybody else? Were you going down the path? What did you find that was useful for not only the value that you created for yourself and Trent and your families, but for people just in general in the MSP space?
We weren't actively going down that path. Outside of that 2-year drill, right? So when word got out that we were starting this, like a couple PE firms started reaching out, and we started just having conversations. Mm-hmm. And it really turned into, all right, we're gonna go ahead and go down this path just so that we know what it looks like in 12 to 24 months when we're actually gonna do this. Help us get us prepared for it a little bit. Maybe it's a little easier, quicker in that regard. And then as things started moving more quickly, it moves very, very quickly in that regard. What was the second half of your question, Kev? I didn't track that.
Well, Dan, I know from my vantage point in this transaction that you had basically 2 really good companies that were suiting you, right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
Ultimately, IT Solutions came out to be the organization that you guys decided to align with there at the end. Yep. But I think for a lot of people understanding, you started down this path with one organization, and you were really hot and heavy looking at this company as the be-all and exit for you. And I'm not going to mention any names, but another great organization that's done a ton of roll-up inside of your area. Mm-hmm. One of the unique things that I found was just the value creation that you and Trent were able to achieve based on having more than one organization take a look, at your books and basically, look at this as a potential acquisition. Yep. How was that managing, the 2 different offers, and then ultimately, what made you land with ITS?
So it was interesting because, I mean, to your point, yes, we started down the path with ITS, thinking like these are our people, values aligned, business model framework aligned. All of that was important, and it looked like, okay, like this is going to be the one just based on early conversations in that regard. However, there was another group that had done some work in our space who had pretty consistently been reaching out to us for several years. And then once we'd done the work and prepared it, just that preliminary information to send over, we reached out and said, hey, like, we're humoring this. If you want to take a look, feel free. And they did. And that's when, honestly, a lot of the value for Trent and myself, and ultimately the team and the staff as well, really started to snowball. Because once you get multiple players involved and people who are interested, there's a lot of value. That is going to make up for a lot of gaps that might exist, and fill in several other areas. So that was a significant component for us to be able to have that. We'd actually reached out to a third one as well, and it was just a bad fit from the start, and that was okay. We were able to move on quickly. from that. But yeah, being able to have multiple suitors. I think I watched somebody sent me a clip of a lecture from, I don't know, like business class at Harvard or something. And they asked like, what's the most important thing to drive value? And everybody asks all these questions. And the answer is bidding more, multiple people who value your organization. Right. So being able to be in a position, and it could be timing. I feel like for us, it was just,
Yeah.
we got a little bit lucky. It was timing and situation of where we were and when we were. But ultimately, if you just have a really good organization, there's going to be multiple people who are really interested.
I think you nailed it right there, Heath. You guys built an amazing business, right? And you were in that position to where, you had the freedom to make those choices. Like you had a great organization throwing, money to the bottom line, right? Like you were in that world-class level of net profit dollars, that were flowing through to both you and your partners. And I think that's one of the big things that a lot of people miss is you don't have to build the organization to scale and exit, but when you build an organization that can be exited and exited for a nice value, you still have the option to run what's just a phenomenal business. And, you and your partner rolled up your sleeves, you got all that hard work done, and you got it to the point to where it was generating, a nice set of profit, not only for you and your family, but for everybody that was a part of Umbrella. You guys were able to pay, top of market for all of the positions. You had great staff. You had built up good leadership. It afforded you the luxury of bringing in, that fractional CRO to really drive your sales and then get you to that next level. What was it like for transaction for the employees and the staff? Are you still in touch with anybody? I mean, I know it's been a little while since, 2023.
Yeah, I keep in touch with a few. I'll get an occasional text or ping somebody around the holidays, that type of stuff. I heard from one of our client success guys and a VCIO here in the last month. So yeah, we try. It was a big component of why we chose ITS as well. The values were very similar. The operational frameworks were similar as well. So that was really gonna limit like anybody potentially running into a place where they didn't have a role. And that stayed true through and through in that regard. That was really, really important to us. But like we ended up, I think I could say this. So we gave back, we took about 7.5% of the purchase price and gave it to the staff.
That's huge.
And it was a big deal to Trent and I. Like some of these people had been with us for years, like 15 years, 12 years, 10 years, a lot of that. And even there were some people that had only been with us for a few years, but had made huge contributions in that period of time to really get us where we were going. And being able to give back to a lot of the folks was really, really important to us. Of just saying thank you, but also like knowing that, hey, we want to make sure that you're taken care of not only today but moving forward as well. So that felt really, really good and was important to us, from the beginning.
Yeah, and I would say that you and Trent did the best job possible to try and align that with an organization that was going to continue with that tradition of growth and scale and values, and a similar framework was big. Kind of looking now, I mean, it's 2023 was the exit. What have you been doing since then? What's life like post transaction?
Life's great, bro. Life's wonderful.
Coming to us live from where?
Costa Rica. You kind of see all the green
Sweet.
out back. Right?
Awesome.
Yeah. So, actually moved my family down here prior to exit, not really knowing, just to that point again of being able to create a business, not without the intention of exit at that point in time, that was sustainable, scalable, and had the team to run it. That I moved my family 3,000 miles away. I traveled back about every 6 weeks just to check in and keep connected. But the business didn't miss a beat. It did not require me there. So we moved down here, and then, I mean, post exit, I turned my, a part-time job was just my health, as you know, and anybody else who's done this knows, like, running a business takes its toll, whether it be stress or eating like crap or whatever it may be. It was rough. So,
all
for
of
the
the
last
above.
100%. So for the last year, I've just kind of focused on my health and taking naps, and I'm playing chess with Trent, little yoga here and there, just trying to undo, 17 years of that stress while picking up a few new hobbies here and there. But yeah, it's been really, really good. I'm slowly starting to get a little itch to get back into something, but that I told myself I'd take it at least a year just to kind of recharge, and it's been great, man.
Yeah, beyond recharging though, it's reconnecting with the family too. You're married, you've got young children, right?
Yeah, like
what's that like?
I picked up my kids from school more times in the last year than I did in the first, 10 years.
Yeah,
that of them collectively and in the aggregate, right? Like being able to hang out with them and just show up randomly when they don't expect me is just the best, man. It's just the best.
That's awesome. So looking back, at the MSP, your tenure, the growth, everything, anything that you would have changed or done differently?
Oh, I would have joined peer group immediately as soon as you could afford whatever it costs, because it pays in spades. That would have been the first thing to do, is that. And, for us, the framework that True Methods provided too, particularly where we were just young, and, this is back 2007. So the MSP space was really still undeveloped. There wasn't a lot of there was no roadmap for anything. That would have been first and foremost of doing that. Getting sales and marketing going sooner. Because if you don't do it, you're just kicking the can, and because occasionally you're going to run into speed bumps, and you're going to have to start over, and it's hard doing that. Like, just getting an existing process would have absolutely. Those two things were probably, if I could go back, that's the stuff that I would lean into hard and change that.
So lean into joining peer, getting everything that you can out of your peer group, and two, building that sales engine. That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, sweet. But Heath, listen, brother, I appreciate you. It's been fun watching you and Trent and the journey of Umbrella. It's been an absolute pleasure to watch you guys grow and what you were able to achieve. And it's even more fun to watch you post-transaction, because now I get to see Costa Rica Heath all the time.
That's right, man. It's good times. Good times. Come visit.
Cool. Brother, I appreciate you. Thanks for jumping on today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Kev.